Remind you, sir, that the hiring committee is concerned about the current state of Albuquerque. We're looking for the person who is best qualified to represent us as city councilor and make a measurable difference in our city. Remember, you have 1.5 minutes per question, except for the last question where you'll have 3 minutes. You will be signaled when there are 15 seconds to conclude your response. I would also say, my mother raised me to be very gracious, so please don't make me interrupt you. Please don't talk about your opponent, and answer the question as specifically as you can. Please introduce yourself to our committee and tell us briefly why you are running for City Council.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. My name is Robert Aragon, and obviously I'm running for City Council because it's an important job. And the reason I'm running for City Council in District 5 is because I've been part of this district all my life. The West Side is part of me. And that's important because I know my neighbors. I'm one of these guys who have lived in the district, and because I've lived in the district, I've stood in the wind, the cold, watching our kids play soccer in the neighborhood. I live in the neighborhood, I shop in the neighborhood, I'm part of the neighborhood. And I know the needs of the neighborhood. And I think that's compelling if you're going to represent the West Side, because it's ever changing. And we have changed with those times as well. And I've seen the change, and I understand what is going on today on the West Side, that we have been inundated with crime, property crime. We don't have any economic opportunity on the West Side. We've had problems with development on the West Side because of redundant and job-killing rules and regulations. We have a problem with our tax code, not only at the state level, but we keep raising taxes as it relates to gross receipts tax. And I understand the implication that has in job creation, but more importantly, in how it has stifled our economic growth. And that's important because if we want to be who we can be, we must have a firm grasp of that. But mostly I see promise in Albuquerque, more so than problems. Everyone's talking about the problems. I see the promise in the city, and the promise in its citizens. And that's why I'm running.
Thank you. Question number 2, identify businesses or industries that you think are most important to Albuquerque's economy, and tell us specifically what you will do to support them.
Well, first of all, every business is important. There is no such thing as one business being more or less important than the other, because most of these business folks are creating jobs, creating economic growth, stimulating growth, providing tax revenue. For to even suggest that one is more important than the other, I just disagree with the general premise, because they're all important. But because they're all important, we need to have an atmosphere in Albuquerque that is conducive for them to grow. And the reason it's important for them to grow is because the city has lost so many young people. Some of our best and brightest are leaving. And the reason they're leaving is because the city has not embraced the integrity of what business folks are doing. And what business folks are doing every single day is taking risks. Taking risks that they hope will not only better their lives, but the lives of everyone in the city. So my premise is this: every business is important. We need to create an atmosphere that is conducive to their growth so that they can create jobs, create tax revenue, and keep our young people here, because we're losing them because we do not have a proper business environment. When I'm city councilor, that will change.
Anything specific that you would add?
Well, in terms of specific growth possibility, I don't want you to exercise what your mom said.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I do. Thank you. If the city experiences a budget deficit or a decline in revenue, as it has in the recent past, what would you propose to balance the budget, and over what time frame?
Well, first of all, there shouldn't ever be a deficit because it violates the Constitution and state law, so we simply cannot have one. So let's start with that general premise, and certainly my background in budget, having been in the state legislature and rising to the level of the vice chair of Appropriations and Finance, I understand we simply can't have that, so that premise again is an incorrect premise. But here's what we have to do. The city has $535 million. What we don't do is start talking about raising taxes, because we keep doing that as an excuse, and frankly, That excuse is nothing more than that, and it's just a way for elected officials, politicians, to be, well, politicians. Tough decisions have to be made. I've made those tough decisions before. So what do we do with the budget? The budget must reflect the priorities of our community. And the first priority of our community must be public safety. So we must start with a zero-based budget. What a novel concept. If you think about how the city budgets today, they start with last year's budget and the previous year's budget. And what does that really reflect? That reflects generations of budget errors. We need to start with a zero-based budget. Make every department justify its existence and whether they're doing a good job. No taxes. We can live within the means of a $535 million budget. I intend to do that. And we'll set our priorities starting with public safety.
Question number 4, what about Albuquerque keeps you up at night? And what exactly are you going to do to help yourself sleep better?
Well, finish this campaign, we'll go a long way to that. But what keeps me up at night is the fact that so many people running for office see the city as a series of problems. They don't see the possibilities. And I'm looking across this room today, and I see good people who always see the possibility of what can be. And one of the problems that we have, and something that keeps me up at night, is the fact that there are so many people who see Albuquerque as a city of problems rather than a city of possibility. And each and every one of you folks who are in business today represent the possibility of what Albuquerque can be, because you do it every day, you work it every day, you put your capital, your personal money at risk every day to make this place a better place. So what do I propose to do? I propose to make it a better place for you all to be successful in your endeavors. That's what I propose to do. Utilize the tools we have in the tool chest. Stop talking about what we can't do and start talking about what we can do. Address issues such as gross receipts tax. Imagine this. I know some of you were in Albuquerque when gross receipts tax was at 4%. Now we're almost at 8%. And every time a politician needs more money, they say it's only 8%, but they fail to talk about the cumulative effect of all these years. We need to have an honest discussion about that and stop that nonsense and see the possibilities of Albuquerque.
Turning to crime.
Let's not.
Unfortunately, so many have. How will you measure your success in reducing crime in Albuquerque? And specifically, at what point in your term would you expect to reach a certain measurable outcome?
Immediately. You know, we have a catch and release problem in our Albuquerque jails. And we do. And the problem isn't that complex. We've made it complex because we have elected officials who keep pointing the fingers at one another. The courts are pointing the finger at the DA. The DA is pointing their finger at the voters for passing a constitutional amendment. Look, we know that we have some frequent flyers going in and out of jail, and most of them are property crime. We have something called a PSA, Public Safety Assessment, that has been adopted by the district court. And essentially what the PSA does, it has risk factors. But what it doesn't have are risk factors that include property crimes. It only talks about violent crimes and repeat offense as it relates to that. We need to make a simple amendment, and this could be done almost immediately with the right leaders who understand the rules, who understand what needs to be changed, and we can make a quick change that will mitigate this property crime wave that we have in Albuquerque by simply adding property crime as a component to the PSA. Change Rule 504 and 509. And all that takes is a simple dialogue with the Supreme Court. Imagine elected officials wanting to cooperate with one another. I do, I will, I'll make it happen. Day one.
How specifically would you change and reallocate city resources and personnel to achieve your goals?
Again, we have to start with zero-based budgeting. It is absurd that we start with a series of budgets that have been accumulated over the last 40 years. Keep in mind that we last reorganized the city government in 1973. We had rotary phones then, folks. We haven't done that. We haven't reorganized. We haven't, as elected officials, we haven't, as citizens, required those departments to continue to justify their existence. We start with zero-based budgeting. We bring every department in to make them, A, justify their existence, and second, to make sure that they are accomplishing what the statute, the ordinance, and the charters require them to do. And then we set our priorities from that point forward. That is what we haven't done. We talk a good talk, and the city council and the city has talked a good talk for many years, because every 2 years and every 4 years, we have candidates for city council and mayor talk about the same basic things. 1, crime, 2, jobs, right? And 3, taxes. And the status quo stays the same. And the reason the status quo stays the same is because folks are more concerned about getting elected and re-elected than doing their job. I believe in term limits, and if I can't do my job within 2 terms, at the very most, I shouldn't be there in the first place. It's time to have serious people in serious positions making serious decisions. I will do that.
What is your position on the mandated sick leave issue?
Bad idea.
Please include whether or not you would like to see it apply to unions, small businesses, nonprofits, and those companies that already have a sick leave or PTO policy.
Whatever a private company wants to do on their own, it's their prerogative. And if they want to do that, I know that we do that in our little office. But anytime government, and particularly politicians and interest groups from outside of New Mexico, come try and dictate to us what is good for New Mexico, no. Period. There's no discussion there. Frankly, the audacity of someone going to George's business to say, we know more about your business than you do, and you must do what we tell you to do with your money, with your enterprise. The audacity. We need to do a few steps. First of all, we need to change the initiation process, the voter initiative process. The threshold is much too low. It allows these outside entities to come into New Mexico and manipulate our government, our way of life, to their advantage. And I would suggest to you what was more appalling about this is that what we just beat, what we just defeated, was an attempt by unions to dictate to you how you run your business. And it was an underhand way to compel union signups in a way that would be detrimental to the good people in this room. I will not agree with it. I will oppose it at every corner. I don't know if I made myself explicitly clear. I think I have.
Final question, sir. In 3 minutes or less, please tell the hiring committee why you are the best candidate to represent the people of Albuquerque as city councilor.
Well, as I stated earlier, I'm a lifelong West Side resident. I'm part of the West Side, and the West Side is part of me. I know it. But I also know that the city has possibilities because I am part of those possibilities. My family is part of those possibilities. All our families are. And I understand that. I understand that there is a relationship between economic growth and keeping our young people here. I understand that we have to have leaders who will be bold enough to say we need a new school district. I understand that we need to have leaders who are willing to take tough positions, not with a body politic, but rather with governance. We need to have elected officials who understand that there's a dichotomy between politics and governing. We need to have elected officials who understand that good policy is always good politics, but good politics is almost never good policy. I understand that. I want to be a city councilor. I don't want to be the mayor. I'm not using this position for my next position. I want to go to the city council and make tough decisions. I want to go to the city council and be able to engage people in discussions that most elected officials are too timid to have. I want to make sure that the voters in my district and around the city understand that with this guy, there are no pale pastels. You will know where I come from, and you'll know my positions. And I want to make sure that folks in my district around the city understand that I have 4 covenants by which I will live by. First, I will have regular monthly meetings in my district so my constituents don't have to go downtown. Covenant number 1. Covenant number 2, I will not take any paid junkets on your dime. If I have to go somewhere, I'll pay for it myself. Covenant number 2. Covenant number 3, which I think is important. I will never be predisposed on any issue. Granted, I'm not unlike you. We all have our biases, we all have our ideas. But I will listen to all arguments, all points of view, before I make my final decision. And I think that's all we can ask for from our elected officials. And number 4, and I have 15 seconds, so I'm going to use it for a little bit different. I want to recognize my wife who's back there, my mom is back there, my family is back there, because I wouldn't be doing this without them. Thank you for making me who I am. I need this job. The city needs me to do this job for them. Thank you.
Thank you.